you for asking me, because it's a special trip to be here. And maybe I better tell you about my crew, but they haven't all got here yet. Lou will be here in a few minutes, but I'll start with Paul Jr. because this building is really a part of his fight. First of all, their daddy went through the public school here and graduated on this stage, played basketball on this stage. I'll speak about it later. And so they feel that this school and this building is a part of their fiber. Then Paul, he was in the first grade a half year, and then in the second grade a half year when Paul Sr. was in the military. And now this is Jenny, she's on down the line, and we've got 2 teachers in the next generation below us, and I'm just hoping that some of those in that 3rd generation in Jenny's group that we'll have some more teachers there, because there've been 3 in our family. And Kay, Willing and Lorraine and I always had something to do at the schoolhouse, and we'd say schoolhouse, getting ready for the next year. And when they'd come in the summertime, we'd bring them down here with us, and they'd be our helpers running up and down that hall and everything. So this school building is a part of her life too. And Lou, all of you know Lou, she's a part of the staff, and isn't that just great? The Holcomb kids became a part of this school in 1922. And then today is 2008, so what's that, 86 years. And you see Lou is back in the school, the Holcomb, and we just hope she'll be, I hope she'll be here, not 39 years. I think that's a little bit too long. And I think it was a little bit too long for Willing, and because of health reasons. But I hope she'll be with you for a long time. And every day when you talk to her about it, she tells how she loves being in the system. I couldn't have done her job. I couldn't have done Willing, and I couldn't, and then we have another teacher in the family too, and she is in the primary, and that's Paul's daughter Mary, and Mary, she's taking Willing's place. And so I don't know who's going to get to be boss in my blood. Maybe some of that 3rd generation will. But it's great to be here.
Speaking of Mary, she's really a born teacher.
Yeah.
She is, when they evaluate her, it goes away her eye.
That's good.
Well, this weekend, I have to back up and tell you that the first year that I was Director of Special Education, I worked with Miss Gladys in this building. And I would come over and we would meet and we would talk about children. And I think I scared her, and she retired after 1 year. She left. That was the end of that. But the interesting thing that I share with Gladys and with the people in this room is that my great-grandmother was a Holcomb. And she was Priscilla Holcomb, part of the Greenberry Holcomb family.
Yeah.
So we are related. We actually are kin.
It's in the blood.
So I think that's a very special honor that I have to be related to Miss Gladys and to the other
I
parts
think
of
it's a
it.
special honor to be with you too.
So, but we're just glad to have her here because I've heard her stand in my office on lots of occasions and talk about this building and how unique it is and how well constructed this building is. And she's going to talk with you, I know about that today, because she can't talk about this building without telling you about how it was built, how it came about, who did it, and the extra pains that they took to make it the special building that it is. And we're just really, really glad that you're here with us and that you agreed to do this.
Oh, thank you.
Because we want to save this conversation for a long, long time. That's what that camera is about over there.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad I've got my crew with me. They're here for 3 reasons. One is that if I fall on this floor, they can pick me up because I have vertigo. And don't ever wish for vertigo. It's terrible. And the second reason they're here, they're a cheering squad. You know, there are 4 of them. And, Lou hasn't gotten here yet, and Ann, our niece, is in Charleston and couldn't be here today. But they really support Willie and me. And so I hope we support them in turn. And then the third reason, this is kind of like homecoming today. Have you ever been to homecoming?
Oh, yeah.
It's just wonderful to be here with you in this building, because all this is so much a part of our lives. As I said, Paul Sr., he was in this school in I'll go back in 1922, 28, and I'm going to show you some evidence later. I brought the proof along. We were all 4 of us in the school at the same time. Lorraine was a 2nd grader. And then, William, what grade were you? You were about 4th or 5th. And then I was a 9th grader. And Paul would have been a 7th grader. So you see, we've been here a long time. And that's just their dad, since this is their daddy's school, they all feel a part of it. And as I said a while ago, we always had something to do at the schoolhouse. And when they'd come to see us, we'd bring them with us, and they'd run up and down the halls, and then help us too. So we feel quite at home. And now it's time for business, isn't it? I'll get down for the purpose for which I came. Well, where's the new superintendent?
He apologizes he cannot be here. His last call of duty in Hart County was to be at their board meeting this afternoon. So.
Well, here comes Lou, and you already know Lou, and Lily. And Lily, I told you we wanted another teacher from that 3rd generation, and it might be Lily. Well, I have a welcome for him. Should I read it, or should I just
Go ahead.
skip it?
Yeah, because he will view the video. That's for sure.
Okay.
Please read it.
We'll imagine he's here. I'm happy to welcome you, Mr. Carsley, your lovely wife, Kelly, your precious children, Sam, Mackenzie, and Sophie, who will be in our school system. I read every word about you in the Northeast Georgian, and all was mighty good. As you made your decision, I firmly believe you wanted the best for your children and for our children. I may be a bit prejudiced, but I think you selected the best. You will love the hills of Habersham. You will be welcomed. You will make friends, and your efforts will be appreciated. I taught here 31 years, and I found the parents and the community so cooperative, supportive, so willing to help in any way possible to strengthen our school program. Our prayer is that you will find being superintendent of the Habersham County Schools the most exciting position of your career. And now, Judy, I'm going to talk to you. And she's Judy to me instead of Dr. Forbes today. I want to thank you for the superb job you have done as superintendent. I particularly thank you for the bulletin board section in the Northeast Georgian. This has given us the opportunity to know the outstanding program that you, our fine board members, your staff have provided for our students. We appreciate the efforts and the leadership of each. We thank you for the vision of future years. I'm a bit more excited about your record because you are 100% Habersham County. Born and bred in Habersham County, educated in our public schools, taught 30 years, and served as superintendent for 5 years. As you go into retirement, you are leaving an enviable record. Krista McAleeve, the astronaut teacher who lost her life in the spaceship explosion was asked by a reporter, "Why are you a teacher?" I loved her response, which was, "Each child I teach, I touch him unto eternity." Judy, you have touched hundreds unto eternity. And my wish is that you can enjoy retirement as much as I. And now I'll have to come back another day and thank our hard-working visionary board members, because Judy gave me an assignment and I better get to the assignment before my time expires, so you can let me come back. The assignment was to give a brief history of this charming old building, which housed my life for 19 years. May we begin by viewing an old photograph which shows that we have come a very, very long way. This photograph shows the old building senior and the student body of 1928, the year I was a 9th grader. You know it was a 2-story frame building sitting on this same side as this one. And I'm going to leave this here with you, and you can have it for your files. And if you want to take a closer look at it sometime. But this is the side that you're looking now, that's the Burn Sutton side. And you see, look at here, and look at that. And then there was another fire escape at the end of the building, and I'll talk about that. But the photograph shows here the total Clarksville District school population, which was probably 150 to 170. And now, Judy, you take the picture, photo card, because I want you to look closely. This remark that I am inserting here has nothing to do with the school history, but note carefully, Judy, how many obese children do you see?
They're not there.
Now, that's 1928. How many did you say?
They're not there.
I don't see any.
They're not there.
Why? That's something for you to think upon. Tom Jr. gave me that idea. We were looking at this old photograph, and he said, "Gladys, look at that. There's not an obese child in that whole picture." All right. Now I'll get on with the building. An abbreviated sketch of this old building, now this is a senior building, would be this. The main entrance was the same as today's entrance. Lengthwise from the main entrance ran a wide hall with a single room on that side for the 3rd and 4th grade, and with a single room on this side for the 5th and 6th. At the end of this hall was another room, a single classroom at the end, and that was the 1st and the 2nd grade. A total of 3 classrooms on the main floor. At this point, where the hall and that single room for the 1st and 2nd grade was another entrance just like the front one. And from both, I want you to notice this, from both of those entrances, a rather wide stairway extended to the 2nd floor. The 7th grade classroom was over this end room down here. It was added on at the end of the hall, and that's the 1st and 2nd room. And now we're up on the 2nd floor. And all these 2 classrooms here and this wide hall on the 2nd floor was one long room. All right, the stage at this end, then the auditorium benches in the middle, and then the 6th and 7th, no, the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade desks were in the back of it. If you look at the head of the fire escape there, you'll see an entrance into back of the building where the classrooms were. Okay, now, a great big pot-bellied stove standing in the classroom section of that room was the furnace. I think we have to stop here and commend the early leaders for their sense of safety, because if you noticed, I mentioned 2 wide stairways. Then you saw this fire escape going up on the Sutton side, Burn Sutton side. Then at the end of this single room here, the 7th grade room up this way, well, there was another fire escape. And you can see that those leaders realized they were in an old frame building, and every child in that building could have gotten out with 4 exits like that. So I just thought that was a good point. From that brief, poor architectural sketch, you can see we've come a long, long, long way. Now, for this lovely old building, I really appreciate the quality of this fine building. Let's look at the beautiful hardwood floors, walked on by hundreds and hundreds, and these floors are 75 years old. In 2008, today, they may be richer in beauty than they were in 1933. And now for another example of its quality, let's make a comparison. Now just look across the road, just across the street at the magnificent Burn Sutton House. Did you know that both were built by Cornelius Church, probably the best local builder of his day? I know of only 4 structures, 4 of his structures: the Burn Sutton House, Clarkesville School Building, Church and Son Funeral Home, and Dr. D.H. Garrison Residence, which is now, in the last week or so, which has become the City Hall. This building is high quality, and I think it is great. It now houses the central office of Habersham County Schools. The building was constructed in 1931-32. The first graduating exercise was held on this stage, right in here, in 1933. This was the first 11th grade graduating class. Will I be forgiven for inserting a bit of family history? My late brother, Dr. Paul Holcomb Sr., was in that 1933 class, and he gave the valedictory address. Clarksville School was in an independent school district and was a 10th grade school. So regretfully, I am not a Clarksville School graduate. I graduated from Cornelius School, 11th grade, in 1931, another independent school. In 1934-35, a WPA building was constructed just behind this building to house the high school. I am glad we outgrew that building, as it was poor quality. Demolishing that building might have been the first act of the Board of Education after locating here, and I'd like to think that it was. The purpose of that building, that structure, was to provide jobs in depressing times. It had one good quality. The boys' restroom was centrally located, and it was warm in the winter. The worst feature was the girls' restroom was hinged on to the end on the outside of the building. The girls had to walk across outside, across an open porch, to use the restroom, and we were always fighting frozen pipes in winter. And now let's go up to 1952. My contract started in September, but I moved in June. And that was a fortunate break for the Clarkesville Elementary School building complex. Note the change in name in 1952. A plan was in place to start a new structure, which you now know as the old lunchroom. The blueprint showed a fine suite for the principal, a fine spacious lounge for the teachers, and an infirmary, and we had no nurse. I was shocked that this was about to happen. I could not see the staff needed such fine accommodations when the children had to eat in a crude basement under this stage. Again, Dr. Costley, the good support from others turned this mess into a miracle. When I talked with Superintendent Ernest Halford, he too was in favor of a change. Let's note Mr. Halford was in his first year, and these plans had been executed by the previous superintendent. Each school had trustees to serve as advisors, and Robert Birch was chairman of the Clarkesville Elementary School. He was an enthusiastic supporter. Another enthusiastic supporter was Irvin Kimsey, an attorney and a former state board member. Irvin Kimsey and Superintendent Halford knew the ropes. Irvin Kimsey advised us to work closely with his friend and current state board member, Fred Hahn. We trucked off to Atlanta and came away with only one restriction: build a lunchroom, but do not change the square feet. So we built a very accommodating lunchroom, and in the right front corner here of the structure, a simple but adequate principal's office and two tiny restrooms for the staff, but they serve the purpose. This change was an asset to the Clarkesville Elementary School complex. From that action came another exciting improvement. That crude basement lunchroom became the space for one of the first elementary school libraries in the state set up by the Dewey Decimal System. But again, this project could have never been done without the support and a lot of hard work by others. Bert Ivester of the Northeast Georgia Regional Library and Sarah Jones, Library Division of the State Department of Education, worked diligently with the best staff of teachers a principal could ever hope to have. We ended up with a fine, functioning library for the children in that crude old basement. There was another project to be faced. And again, this fine old building, I just think this is the best building in the world. And again, this fine old building was accommodating. The restrooms were a dug out the restrooms were dug out rooms in the basement with narrow staircases. I guess you've noticed those narrow staircases. That must have been the architectural design of that day, because I don't believe that was Cornelius Church's designing. This situation consumed too much teacher time in ushering the children in and out of the restrooms, and this condition also was a safety hazard. The principal was now in the lunchroom office. The staff could have a cup of coffee in the lunchroom, and the vacated principal's office in that front building at hall and the teacher's lounge were adequate sized rooms adjoining the entrance to the auditorium. And that was just perfect. That was the solution. Those restrooms were brought upstairs. And you see, we solved the problem, and we did not create another problem, because this old building had another fine feature. In the corner of each of these two rooms was a private restroom for the staff. So no problem was created while we corrected another one. And again, this fine old building was accommodating. One of those basement rooms made a fine art supply room and a place for us to put our kiln. And the other one made a good storage room because we badly needed that. Now let's see. And I'll just keep bragging on it. This building had another great asset. This large auditorium and a large stage where we are now, which for years served not only as a stage, but as a basketball court. Paul Jr. has played on this basketball court with Irvin Kempton, some of that age, when he'd be over here and play with them. Many basketball tournaments took place in this building. Many did. And not only did we have a fine indoor basketball court, but we had an auditorium that was filled with spectators, because at that time, basketball was a chief sport of the day. So we just had it made. However, Clarkesville Elementary School used this facility for another purpose. Friday was assembly day. Classes rotated in presenting the programs, and the stage was large enough for every child in the class to be in the program. There was space in the auditorium for the parents of that class to attend the program. The PTA financed a new piano, a fine front curtain, 2 background curtains, one for very large space and one for less space. And the PTA worked with the North Georgia Technical School for proper stage lighting, and ours was first class. Mr. Costley, I may be pointing out these accommodations, these accomplishments, because they show the outstanding support you will have from teachers, parents, and the community. It is now 1972, and it's time for me to say farewell to a wonderful 19 years in these hallowed halls. This building has a noble history. I am so happy it has been preserved, restored, and improved in its beauty and its function. And it is now serving a nobler cause in being the heart and the center of the Habersham County school system. Just think of the exciting years ahead for this grand old dome.
You know, I think you failed to mention one of the greatest assets of the building, and that's the fact that it had you here. Because you provided leadership and led the way, and, you know, growing up in this community, I benefited from a lot of the things in this building. I was a student at North Habersham. I didn't grow up in Clarksville, but I came to school at North Habersham, and she's talked about the stage here that we're sitting on. But as a high school student, I participated in some musical productions that were done here, and we couldn't have done them anywhere else. And we were the envy of everybody in Northeast Georgia because we had a facility, and we had people that cared enough about children to make sure that those things were done and that they were done well and they were done correctly for our children. And it's because of leadership like Gladys Holcomb.
Oh, but I had a wonderful staff. And everybody, the county office was so nice. Goodness, we had a great working time. You mentioned one thing about this state. A Gainesville theater group once came up here to play. One of our staff members was a member in that group, Sally Higgins. And you know what they told us about that stage with those curtains and those lights that we had? They said, this is the best stage we play on this side of Gainesville. I mean, this side of Atlanta.
Wow.
So we've always, listen, we've had the best a long time. This building's just great.
Gladys,
It's accommodating.
the stage y'all are talking about was, I mean, we're on it now, right? This room was. Okay, was it that where Judy's office was?
That's the back part of it there,
Okay.
isn't it?
Was
and
it
I
this
know,
part also?
It was at the back.
Yeah,
Okay.
it extended out and
Yeah.
then, right, I guess, well,
It was a standard, you know.
For me, it ran north and south.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Across
Okay.
this way, and it was at the back wall.
Okay.
and if you stand at the wall before you go into the curriculum department, the back rows of seats were there. And if you stand at the back, you can put a ball on the floor and watch it roll because the floor slants, and there's a reason why it slants. I've had people to say, this room isn't square. Well, it was never intended to be square. It was built so that we could have those kinds of things.
And I think another way to get a perspective of it, you know that side door right out
Yeah.
there
Right,
when you,
right,
before you
right.
get okay, that side door with those 3 or 4 steps up carried you on the stage.
Okay.
That was right where the front curtain was.
Okay.
So you're
They
looking.
made there, and we had a door on this side and a door on this side so that, you know, you could have exits for getting people on and off and so.
So does this floor have the heart pine under it too?
It
Yeah.
does. It
It's
does.
hardwood.
It's hardwood.
Hardwood.
Oak. Oh, it's oak. Okay.
You know, I'll tell you something that burned me up. I wasn't mad at anybody, but I just thought, oh, our children didn't get to enjoy it. Every time, those beautiful hardwood floors, and I knew what they were, see? I knew what they were. Okay, then to keep down the dust instead of some other refinishing something or some other treatment, I don't know anything about that, I just know to get a broom. But they'd put something on at the beginning of the year, and a school year, and then at Christmas time, and it looked to me like burned motor oil, if there's such, and put that all on the floor. Well, you'd drop your clothes or jacket or anything, and when you brought it up, you know how it looked. But that was to keep the dust down. See, they didn't get to enjoy it. Our children
was
did
cheap,
not
man.
get to enjoy those beautiful
Also, it was
hardwood
cheap.
floors.
Also, it was cheap.
Yeah, preserved the wood and it was cheap.
Yeah, it was cheap.
Miss Gladys, while I was a student at North Habersham High School, my first job was here when you put down the sweeping compound and sweep the floors.
Yeah, yeah.
So I remember those days very
Yeah,
well.
I do too. And I just regret that the children didn't get to enjoy the beauty of these. You look at these floors. They're
They're
beautiful, aren't
beautiful.
they?
They're beautiful.
First class.
Let me ask you one thing. Can we prevail on you? Is may we keep the copy of your notes to go with our archives? I think that would go so wonderfully with the video. That's in your handwriting. That'd be wonderful.
They're in,
I'll make copies for each of us. I
Okay, that's
know
wonderful.
you'd like to have them back too, but we'll make sure that everybody
well, I
gets.
have to say, you know, your Carol was gonna do that, but things have been, see, I got the vertigo, and things have been, and we've lost our sweet Louise is gone to be with Jesus. We've had so many things happening in the family that I just came down and picked up the notes and said, we'll have to wait till another time. So Carol offered to do it.
Okay.
I can remember this. Coming down here in the summertime up from Clarkesville, and of course we thought, oh my goodness, this is really out in the country. My aunts and my grandmother, and we came from Spartanburg, which we thought was a big town back then compared to Clarksville, and we came over here, and it was in like the almost fifth grade, and I couldn't read. I could not read. I had learned words by sight, but I couldn't read. Daddy knew I was a very sweet child, but he said, maybe she just isn't going to be able to read. So he told his sister, he says, do you think that you could maybe give her a little test and see how she's doing? And I'll never forget, we were down there supposedly cleaning the books in the library, and Gladys says, why don't you just take this little test and we're going to see how you do. And I can remember, evidently there was a reason why I could not read, and nobody knew it. And Gladys said, now Paul, she can read. I don't know what the teachers are doing in Spartanburg, but this child surely should be able to read. So she saved me, and I ended up being partially deaf, and that was the reason why I couldn't read. But Aunt Gladys, she saved me on that one.
And talking about testing, where's Lou? Lou, let me tell you something funny. She was, as I said, we'd come down here, we'd have to come to the schoolhouse, you know. Lorraine taught 15 years, my late sister. Okay, and have something that always. And one day we were down here, and I had Lou with me that day, and she was going to start in the first grade that fall. And I thought, well, I'll just see if Lou's ready to start. And I took her down to Willeen's room, and I gave her one of those readiness tests, you know, for the first grade. And not one time did it dawn on me that Spartanburg might be using the same readiness test that Clarkesville Elementary School was when there are hundreds on the market, you know. So I gave Lou the readiness test and knocked the top out of her. But this was a funny thing. Lou, you want to tell them? But anyway, the teacher, Lou said, I've had this before. You know how first graders speak up, they tell the truth. She said, I've had this before. And the teacher said, where did you have it? To Lou. We weren't cheating, were we, Lou? I just didn't think about Spartanburg, and I just wanted to know if she was ready. After all, she was my niece. And she's a teacher taking my place, maybe.
Ms. Holcomb, where did you start prior to coming to Clarksville? Where did you start your teaching career?
I started out at Amos Creek after I'd had 2 years at Piedmont. And Piedmont, if you could make the grades, and they'll let you do that now, would let me, I went ahead and graduated my class with Piedmont, but I taught out at Amos Creek 2 years, because I'd go in for Saturday classes and take all those tests, and it wasn't that hard. And but I didn't have any social life during those 2 years. But I taught out there 2 years. Then I came here and taught 10 years. And then I thought, you know, there might be greener pastures. I believe I'll go and see. And I went, Moultrie and DeKalb County, to me, were the two top schools in the state. And I had a good friend teaching at Moultrie.
Okay.
And that was my lucky break. The Lord has been good to me. He's just opened one door right after the other. And so, you see, this good friend recommended me. I stayed there a year. My father had a heart attack, and I took a leave of absence. But I couldn't go back at the end of the school. You see, when was that? I was there 43 and 44. Well, you know, transportation was terrible, and riding a bus from Moultrie to Clarksville was something. So, you know, and this is another thing, the way the Lord opened the door. I said, I can't go back to Moultrie and leave Mama and them here, because Paul had his family, and my father was to look after and all. And I said, I'm going to Gainesville, and I called and asked if Mr. Cheeves would let me come for an appointment. Now, you listen to this. I went in there and gave him my application, and we talked, and he interviewed, and we carried on for a little while. It was a quick thing, because it was right before school opened. And he looked over at me, and he says, Miss Holcomb, do you know anybody in Gainesville? I said, yes, sir, Mr. Lester Hush. He is our friend. And Mr. Lester Hush had the wholesale business right next to the Gainesville High School, which is now part of the city hall government, you know. I said, yes, sir, Mr. And do you know what? I left Mr. Chee's office, came around, and went into Hush Brothers to tell Mr. Lester Hush what I had done. And guess what? Mr. Cheese was talking to Mr. Lester Hush on the telephone. And so then I stayed in Gainesville 7 years.
Okay.
And I decided the greenest pastures of all was Habersham County. And I also felt this, Habersham County's been wonderful to me, been wonderful to my family. And I thought if I have anything to give, I'm going to give it to Habersham County. The children of Habersham County, if I have anything. And would you believe that at the spring meeting of the Board of Education, they divided the schools and they made North Habersham, you know, over there, and Clarkesville Elementary over here. And Mary Church, she was the, about children stay out of school. No, I don't want to call her truant officer, but you know what I mean. And she was at that board meeting, and she called me in Gainesville. And she said, Gladys, the Clarkesville Elementary School was formed today. And I know you want to come home. I got my car within 15 minutes, and I came home to see about that. And I've been here ever since, thank the Lord. But isn't it interesting how the Lord takes care of you and moves you from post to post to give you a good life?
Gladys, you remember any particular experiences with any of the children that stood out? Any that?
Yeah. I can think of a guy
How much time you got, Alan?
We got plenty of time. We got time.
Okay, I'm thinking of this. I had some children that lived right over here, all kind of close to the city dump, some boys. And the school bus, the regulations, they were over 2 miles and they had to go up here, you know, and come in like that. Okay, they could have split off down this road, and that was what they wanted to do, and been at home in 20 minutes, you know. They could run their heads off. And there they had to sit in that auditorium until 4 o'clock. Well, and they weren't mean, but they didn't want to sit in that auditorium till 4 o'clock when they could have been home in 15 minutes. And so I went out, I took Willeen one Sunday afternoon, and I went out to see them. And I said, the Mama and Papa's going to be there this afternoon and all. And I told them, I said, I'm going to have some help here today with these boys about this staying in the auditorium. And we talked through that. And then you know what I did? I looked, and their mother was just beautiful. But guess what? She didn't have any teeth. And there her youngest child would have been in about the 4th grade. And now why I said this, I don't know, but somebody ought to take it aboard to me. I said, have you ever wanted any teeth? And she said, yes,
You
ma'am,
said it lovingly, I know.
but I don't have anything to pay for. And she told me that when she was pregnant with this last child, she went to the health department and had to have her teeth extracted and had never had any money to buy any. Okay, as we left, I looked at Willeen and I said, Willeen, I think I bought me a second set of teeth today. Okay, so then to get on down, and we did get the teeth made at a very reasonable price because, I won't call them names because I don't want to advertise today, but one of the dentists gave all this labor, and all we had to do was get up a reasonable amount. Now, that's what I want to tell you. The son, the older one, was in the 7th grade. He talked with his teacher, Ruby Howard, and said, Miss Howard, if you will help me and let me stay out of school some and help me make up my work, I can work for Fieldale catching chickens, and I can pay for my mother's teeth. You know. And so Miss Howard, and of course some of the rest of us helped pay for them. But this is a good story. I was talking to him the other day, and he said, Miss Holcomb, you know, I started working with Fieldale when I was 13 years old. I have never had another job, and I'm a supervisor today.
Wonderful.
So you see, they just,
Right.
I could just tell you hundreds like that.
Let me ask you, if you could also, because we're kind of getting the history here, is could you share with us who your mom, I know it was Holcomb, but like your mother's family, the names, I'm big on family names, and it helps when you kind of talk about it now. So who are your mother's people and who are your grandparents? The last names, who might be county
My
names?
mother's people were, the last name was Berg, and my mother was reared at the foot of Yona Mountain, and that's of course in White County. And my mother went to Oaks Chapel, and there's some of you, who's heard of Goat Neck over there in White County? Well, that's what I'm talking about, over there, that little community. And I guess she finished about the 4th or the 5th or 6th grade. You know, Oaks Chapel was a little church on Sunday, and during the week it was a school, you know. And then my father went to Amos Creek, so you see, that area in there is just our roots.
Your mother was a Burke.
B-U-R-K.
Mm-hmm. And your grandmother on your mother's side was?
What, she was my grandmother
Yes, ma'am.
on my mother's side.
Yes, ma'am.
Lily Burke. And then my mother's grandmother, I think this is kind of interesting. My mother's grandmother was Mary Alley, a member of, you know, the Alley family that all you people. So you can't talk about anybody and have them kind of like talking about their folks.
Well, I'll embellish a little bit, Allie. As far as the Holcomb side, we are the 8th generation of Holcomb that has been in the Chattahoochee,
Okay.
Amos Creek area. Okay. And again, we all are just so proud of our grandparents. Like we say, probably had 4th and 5th education. My granddaddy sawmilled and saved $500, and he bought 100 acres on Preacher Campbell Road. It ran from the dirt road to the river. And that was in 1910. And that
April the
year,
17th.
he was 22 years old, and that year he married our grandmother. They, from almost the beginning, they were totally committed to their children being educated. And they moved to town so that they could go to the best school in the county, the 2-story white frame school. And of course, my daddy was an MD. My 3 aunts all had their masters, you know, which, you know, we just are so blessed. And it's just really hard to believe that they had that kind of focus on education. But that was their focus was to educate their children. One other side about Gladys I wanted to tell, and there's several stories, but, you know, how it's changed. Gladys, I want you to tell them. There's several stories that come to my mind about when you would see a child at school and you would go home and sit and talk to the parents about the condition of that child at school. You know what I'm talking about? Give them one of those stories.
Well,
Like, for example, the child with where you could see the whelps.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, goodness, you're getting me off on the track, sure enough. We had this child, and and you people are in education, and you know this goes on. It was this lady and her children, and this gentleman and his children, and yet they weren't married, but they were living together. And one of his children, we had at that time the maintenance people were a man and his wife. And she came down to me and she said, Miss Holcomb, oh, you need to see something. And she told me that that little girl that she was just beat all to pieces. And so I said, well, how do you know? And the little first grader had asked Ms. Ledford if she had looked, you know how children are. And when I went up there to see that, and you wouldn't dare do that today. You wouldn't dare. I'd be put under the jail to look and see how the little girl's body was beaten up. And so that upset me so, and I just got in my car and I went out there. And I went in, and he was down cutting wood or something, the papa was. And so she was one of the Demore girls. And I said, and I told her why I was there, and she asked him to come in, and he wouldn't come in. He didn't come in. And so I said, well, I can stay all day. Will you just let me sit here in this chair? And I know he's going to get hungry enough. Sooner or later, he's going to come in. I'll just stay. And he came in after a while. And I didn't have much discussion with him, but I told him, I said, if I ever see that again, I will go straight to the sheriff, and I will not come to your house. And then I remember, and I remember another little child that the father drank a lot, and this child was in the 3rd grade. And the shoes that she had been wearing to school, they were nothing. I could just see that little girl sitting over there in this end room next to the one. They were just ragtags. So we bought her, those little Mary Janes, is that what? And so, the PTA always gave us some money. We had some, and then we had people in town that gave. I could just tell you some. And we had one family, I'll interrupt here, that never did have the pleasure of buying one pair of shoes. This family had gobs of money, and you would just die laughing if I told you. But I'd send the child over there with a note and say, do you think that you could help us? I wouldn't send the child that needed them, but I'd always send children. Will you buy a pair of shoes? And they'd always send me back $2.50. And you needed $5 at that time to buy a pair of shoes. And so they had the pleasure of buying one shoe several times. But the thing that was this little child, she had her shoes. The next morning she came into school. And she didn't have on her shoes. And so her teacher, and it just upset her teacher so bad. Asked her, says, well, why didn't you wear your new shoes today? And she said, my daddy wouldn't let her. And if you had just seen her little back end, he had beaten her just something terrible. And then I can remember another child.
That's good. I had something there. Would you mind?
What?
I had the same little girl in the 1st grade.
Yes.
And I went to Belk's and bought all this fabric. And I carried home. I bought a pattern, and my mother made it all these cute little dresses. And I tell you something on Lou.
Listen to this, Lou.
So Lou said, well, let me go to store. And I said, we said, oh, they're for a little needy child. And she said, well, I'm the needy child.
And then she went pouting upstairs, Lou did.
She was upstairs just fly.
Yeah, when they say.
Well, Mama made her some dresses.
Yeah, made her clothes.
It already made her so.
I thought that was so cute, but. No.
Gladys, do you remember what your salary was when you started?
It wasn't as much as a long-distance truck hauler. I'm one of the students that I taught.
Did you consider being a long-distance truck hauler?
No, but I'll tell you how I knew. One of the students that I taught, and he was a tall boy in the 6th grade, and I had to put him in the very back row, and so smart. And I had another boy in there that every one of you know, and he's such a fine citizen in Habersham County, but he just, he was like Kay. Somehow Kay thought she couldn't read, but he had to do second grade work, and I could tell you his name, but you would know him, and everybody just loves him. And so I put the guy back here, the second grader, by my sixth grader. And do you know that when he had finished with his lesson, well, back then you had 38 to 40 students in the room, Pat, and we didn't know what it was to have 20. We had never had any less than 35. And do you know, he became the teacher to that boy right there. But what I'm going to tell you about the old tall guy, several years later, he came into my class, in the office after I was principal, and he was so proud of himself, and he was telling me how many trips he had driven to New York, and he had never had an accident with his, you say long haul driving, is that what you say? And I said, do you mind telling me what you made? And he told me, I didn't dare tell him what I made, because I was making about half as much as he was making. But I've just had some.
Well, did y'all have benefits back then? Like, did you have, like,
Did we have
health
what?
benefits, like health insurance or anything like that?
Now, teachers didn't get to go into Social Security, Pat. Now, you checked on this. Until 1972. I retired in June. I beg your pardon. It would have been 1975. Because I retired in June of 72, and I had just exactly gotten in the number of months. Is that 48? Mm-hmm. You had to have 48 to qualify. So you see, we wouldn't have gotten in. You subtract 48 months from June 1972. I just barely did get mine in, but we didn't have any benefits.
Alan, I think one of the most interesting things I've ever heard Gladys say is one day, our father I guess it was around her retirement time, and he asked her very seriously, if you had not been Gladys Holcomb, who would you have liked to have been? What'd you tell him, Gladys? What'd you tell him?
I said, that was Power Senior. We were having one of our senior serious moments then. And I said, well, I'd rather be Mother Teresa or Margaret Thatcher.
Good choice.
And this is another thing that sometimes that I get called on, and I just think this is neat. I do believe that, really, all you women forgive me, but I still believe it's a man's world. And they'll look at me, well, who was the first principal of the Clarkesville Elementary School? And I'll say I was. Who was the first woman principal in Habersham County? I guess I was. And they'll say, and you say that you think it's a man's world.
The one thing, Gladys, I will ask about that point. Now, I think you told me that one reason you left Gainesville was the superintendent there told you something.
The reason, at that time, when Mary Church was the person who called me, but I had already gone in and told and asked, I had qualified when I got my master to be, you could take a two-pronged thing. You didn't draw anything on your master's. If you had an administration certificate, you had to have that subject area, and then, so I went in and talked to Mr. Cheese, the one that had given me the job 7 years earlier, about, and I told him I was ready, and I wanted to be a principal. And this is a neat thing about that. And then, of course, he didn't want a woman principal. So just in a few days, I got the chance to go back in a few weeks, and I said, well, Mr. Cheese, And I did love Mr. Cheese, and he was the best superintendent that I'd ever worked on up to that time. He was terrific. And he wasn't just of that Gainesville school system, he wasn't county. And I told him, I said, I won't be coming back, and I began to thank him for everything. And he asked me where I was going, and I said, I'm going to the Clarkesville Elementary School. And I saw him, and I didn't know until I became principal what that was. And he took his desk out like this, and he pulled out a book, a little book. And Judy, you know what it was? It was a directory of all the schools in the state, and after the name of the school, it had the number of teachers in that school. And you see, he didn't know that Clarkesville School had become Clarkesville Elementary and North Habersham. He didn't know it had been divided. And boy, did it look big. That number was so big. When he looked at it and saw Clarkesville School, because he had the current, you see. And there, it was about twice as much. All the North Habersham teachers and all that. And I said, well, you know, that just kind of evened things up. He didn't want me for a principal, and then he could get food and thinking I was going to school twice as big as it was. Hadn't I had a good time?